Welcome, I'm Kinetic Symphony. This is Dave. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the supernatural. Case file number 1750, written by deaddlikelatin. Trail of Disbelief, where bridges deceive. So I essentially grew up in the woods. I live in the middle of nowhere and spent more time in the forest than I did out of it. My whole family would go to my grandparents every weekend, and they had a huge property mostly made up of a forest that me and my cousins played in all the time. We all knew the woods pretty well, and from a fairly early age, we'd all be allowed to explore by ourselves as the likelihood of getting lost was slim to none, especially if we stayed on the trail. Within these woods was a cabin that my family had built together. It was common for us to all go there and hang out. It wasn't super deep in the woods, and the way there was almost a straight shot, aside from one turn near the entrance of the forest behind my grandparents' house, where you had to cross a bridge to get over a deep ravine and then turn left. After that first left turn, you walk straight on the trail and you end up at the cabin. It was a walk that I must have made at least 1,000,000 times before I turned 10. It was decently common for there to be one group of people at the cabin. And one day, when I was about 10-ish, exactly this happened. I was with the group at the cabin and decided I wanted to head back to the house, so I started on the walk. I remind you, it was almost impossible to get lost on this walk, but when I got to where I should have turned the corner and see the bridge and the back of the house, I only saw the bridge. Past the bridge was just more woods. I was extremely confused, and honestly, pretty scared. Because no matter how much I tried to tell myself I must have taken a wrong turn, that just didn't make sense. There were no other bridges in my grandparents' woods, and there's no way I could have accidentally crossed into a neighbor's property in that short of a walk, even if I had somehow taken a wrong turn on a walk, where I stayed on a straight trail and somehow didn't notice. I knew these woods very well, and everything around suggests that across that bridge should have been my grandparents' house, but somehow it wasn't there. I was not crossing that bridge. Absolutely not. I turned around and walked back to the cabin. And again, I'm almost certain I couldn't have taken a wrong turn, because the walk back to the cabin was identical to the walk from my grandparents' house to the cabin. When I got to the cabin, no one believed me when I recounted what happened. They assured me I just got lost somehow. In fact, my mom was mad that I didn't tell anyone I was leaving, and then was careless enough to get lost. When I brought up the fact that that was impossible because I saw the bridge and there's no other bridges in the woods, they said I was lying to get out of trouble. This is only one of many weird stories I have that took place in these woods. It's one of those I don't bring up with family anymore, as they still believe I was lying, or they don't even remember it, so they dismiss it as a dream. I know it wasn't a dream. I still can't explain what it was though. Case file 1750. Trail of Disbelief, where bridges deceive. So one thing a lot of these stories have taught me over the years, in mental preparation for becoming a father one day, is give your children the benefit of the doubt. It's like a knife to my soul. Every time I read these stories where parents disbelieve or outright reject the thoughts of their children, put in some effort so they believe that you believe them. That trust has to run both ways. A lot of parents, I think, they only expect it one way. I don't know. Maybe I'll feel differently when I'm a father, but I expect not. Now, the question in this case, in this story, is where would you have been if you crossed that bridge to Terabithia? Now, I make that reference as a quick parallel, but I think it's more than that. I think it's more than your imagination. I think that transcended imagination and crossed into outright creation, or at least perception. Perhaps of a different universe, which is relatively common. But then if you cross the bridge, are you stuck in a new universe permanently? Is it like a manifestation of choice? It's like you often see in movies and shows where if you die, you're in a limbo state, and you go to this place that is maybe a restaurant, a train station or something, and there's a symbolic gesture you have to make, an act of will, like boarding a train or exiting through one door over the next. Choice is the final variable that even the architect can't account for. Case file number 1751, written by Bubbly Opinion 99. Miracle in the Air, Survivor's Prayer. My uncle was a pilot and wanted to take me and my grandparents to my cousin's college graduation. I was 13. We were all waiting at the small airport outside when he touched down on a single-engine 4-seater plane. Don't know the real name of it. When he landed, I immediately got a gut-punch, stomach-dropping feeling. I wasn't scared of flying, but something inside me told me that something was wrong or off. I don't know if he landed funny or what, because nobody else seemed to react the way I did, but I had a very hard time shaking that uneasy feeling. We all loaded into the plane and took off. Not even a minute or two passes by, and we're now high above the tree levels, when suddenly, the engine stalls. I didn't realize it right away, but noticed that something was wrong again. Wrong, and noticed my uncle was intently focusing on turning the plane around. That's when I saw the engine had stopped. In a blink of an eye, we bank hard and start nosediving down. I closed my eyes and said my goodbyes to myself, and we all silently went down. There was a loud crash and noise, and I felt my whole body snap forward and back, and I saw a flash. Next thing I know, I feel like I'm okay, and so I open my eyes and see that I'm alive. I very quickly gather my wits about me and check on everyone else, and everyone seems to be also alive. I look out of the window because I hear something to my side and see the gas pouring out. I shake my uncle and tell him we need to get out now, and he springs into action, unbuckles his seatbelt, as do I, and I start asking if everyone is okay. My grandparents are in shock, but responsive, and we reach over, swing the door open, and get everyone out. We start walking away from the plane and see an ambulance arriving at the same time. People had seen the crash and called 911. The entire plane was destroyed. Wings snapped off, nose smashed, tail broken, and yet the area we were sitting in was completely intact. My uncle and I were okay. We had a massive bruise later on, where the seatbelt had held us, and I had a small headache. My grandpa was fine too, and my grandma had like 2 broken ribs, but otherwise okay. Still to this day, don't know how my gut knew something bad was going to happen. Biggest mystery of my life, besides the fact that we survived something catastrophic like that. Case file 1751, Miracle in the Air, Survivor's Prayer. So I do think this is a quantum immortality story, eventually, the survival of it. But before that, you had a sense of premonition of what was going to happen, a gut feeling. Very strong, very clear, and very accurate, of course, in this case. Here's a question. If you die in one universe and you're engaged in quantum immortality, you zip over to a different universe, just your soul, but before in the other universe you were clairvoyant or at least had premonitions, do you retain that ability, that power, in the new universe? Does it move with your soul? Or is it related to the physical body? Maybe in birth, maybe something happens in your brain. There's slight differences in how it's constructed, how it's built. And because of those differences, they enable different parts of the brain to function together enough to enable premonition and stuff like that. I don't know. Is it tied to the soul or the body? A very interesting question though. Now time for the quote of the day. Souls don't die. The Iron Giant. Rather fitting, I think, in this case. I watched it, of course, as a kid growing up, and I just found it funny how relatable it is as a movie to the stories I read on this channel. You know, speaking about metaphysical stuff and soul and everything, even though it's not talking about quantum immortality, it is about living on, persisting, even in death. And however you frame that, it's a beautiful thing.